Hello and welcome back. In this video, we are going to add the controller method for our sign up, auth sign up, and then add the route. Okay, so go to your controllers. We already have our health right here. Okay, so we have the health route. It's fine. We can leave it here or add it to a folder, but I will leave it here. Inside the controllers, I'll create an auth folder. And then inside I'll create signup.ts. Okay, so here now let's define the class. So I'll say export class signup, and then I'll create a function public async. I'm using async because we will use await as well. The function name will be create. It will take request of type request from express, and then response of type response from express, and then promise void. Okay, now what we need to do simply is to use the service method we already created, so the API service. So we need to use this method, this sign up method. Okay, and remember we already have an instance created, so I'll say here const response equal to await, and then auth service dot sign up, and then what do we need to pass? Request dot body. This is the request dot body is coming from the front end. Okay, this request body is coming from the front end, and then we pass it into this function, and then this function will send the request to the auth service. So okay, so we get this data will come from the front end, and then we send the request to the auth service, and then this response will contain whatever the auth service sends back. Okay, so let me copy this. This will be of type Axios response. Okay, now what we want to do here is to set the JWT token in the session. Remember that we are also using the cookie session here. Okay, cookie session. We already implemented this because we want to save the token in the cookie session from our API gateway. So how do we do that? Remember also, if we go back to our auth service, let's go to our auth service controllers sign up. You can see here that we are sending the user object and a token. Okay, so this is the token we want to use to set the session inside the API gateway. So here I will say request.session equal to, and then I'll create an object. The property I want to add is JWT, and then the value is going to be response.data.token. Okay, so in Axios, your response is always inside a data object. Okay, so with the Axios response, if we click here, we can see we have this data type, okay, which uses a generic type, and then you have your status test, headers, and the other properties. Okay, so the data we need, the token we need is inside this data object. That is why I'm using response.data.token. So with this, this property will be added to request.session, okay, as the JWT token. And then let us just send whatever response we want to send to the front end. So this will be status codes dot created, then dot JSON. Remember that we sent a message, so this will be response dot data dot message. We sent a user object, so response dot data dot user. Okay, we are getting it from here. To just show one more time. Okay, so the message, that is what we have here. The user, this user, that is what we have here, and then the token, that is what we are using right here. Okay, so we have that set up. let's go ahead now and add our routes, add this to the routes. Okay, so in the routes folder, create the, maybe let's create a routes file. Let me see. Okay, here in this route folder, create another folder or another file. Let's make it a file, auth.ts. Okay, so this will handle all the routes related to the authentication. Okay, so I can define mine here. Let's copy what we have in our health route and then make changes to it. So this will be auth routes. Okay, this will be auth routes. Here we are still using the same router constructor. Now for the routes function, this will be a post. So I'll say post, and then here, this is the route that is sent to the auth service. Okay, so here we can say maybe auth/signup, and then I will define, I'll call signup. So signup dot prototype dot, what is the name of the function? Create. Okay, let me remove this. You might be wondering, okay, why are we using prototype here? Because we defined this inside a class. Okay, we defined this inside a class, and we are using it without creating an instance. Normally, if we want to use it, we would have just done something like this: const signup equal to new signup. Okay, and then we can just call this. Okay, it should work, but I'm using it without creating an instance of the class. Okay, so yeah, if you want to do that, you can do it inside your constructor. Okay, so here now we have the post route. Let's go to this routes folder or this route file, and then we are going to define the auth route. So let me create a base. So const base underscore path. Okay, this is going to be /API/gateway/v1. Now remember, I said the auth routes will not have this base paths right here. Okay, so but for every other route we have that path. So here I'm going to pass the base route, and then I'll call auth routes. So here it's going to be at gateway. Okay, so right now we have defined the route. So when the request comes from the client, it will be intercepted by the API gateway, and then the API gateway will attach, if it needs to, it will attach the required JWT token if it exists, and then sends the request to the authentication service. We're going to stop here. In the next video, we will test this out.